Indian Navy on high alert after Chinese warships spotted near Andaman Islands. Another channel screamed, China's trade at risk. India's island defenses rattled Beijing. Across Asia, the air felt heavy with tension. The world watched as India and China moved their chess pieces in the blue expanse of the Indian Ocean. For years, these stories seemed distant, just words scrolling at the bottom of TV screens. But now, with both navies on the move, it was clear, something big was happening. The Indian Ocean, once a peaceful highway for ships, became a stage for military power. Journalists shouted updates, while analysts scribbled maps full of arrows and red circles. Why all this drama? It centered on a few dots on the map, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. These islands, often overlooked, suddenly became the most important real estate in Asia. Their position could decide the fate of ships, oil, and even the economies of two giant nations. Beneath the breaking news were bigger questions. How did these islands become so important? And why is China so worried about what India might do there? The world changed after the deadly clash in Galwan Valley in 2020. Indian and Chinese soldiers fought on a cold, dark night high in the Himalayas. It wasn't just a border skirmish, it was a warning shot for the whole region. In the days that followed, India acted quickly. The Indian Navy sent warships to patrol the waters around the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. No one missed the message. India was ready to use its maritime power if needed. Cameras flashed as destroyers and submarines cut through the waves. Radar domes spun, watching for any sign of Chinese ships. The Indian Navy even held exercises with its allies, showing off its growing strength. China noticed these moves. Their ships, usually at home in the South China Sea, began venturing further west, closer to India's island outposts. Tensions rose as both sides tested each other's patience. The Indian Ocean was no longer a quiet backyard. It was a front line. These steps showed that India's navy could move fast and hit hard. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands weren't just for defense, they were launch pads, ready to control the heart of the Indian Ocean. Look at a map. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands are a long chain of green dots, stretching across the eastern edge of the Bay of Bengal. They sit like a sentry at the mouth of the Malacca Strait, a narrow gap between Indonesia and Malaysia. Ships by the thousands must pass through this gap to reach China. These islands are more than sandy beaches and palm trees. To military planners, they are an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Fighter jets, helicopters, and surveillance planes use their runways. Indian warships refuel and resupply at their ports. Soldiers man radars and missile batteries, eyes fixed on the sea lanes. The island's location is their true strength. From here, India can see every ship that enters or leaves the Malacca Strait. If needed, missiles or submarines could threaten enemy vessels. This makes the islands a perfect spot for both defense and offense. No wonder China keeps a close eye on what India does here. Whoever holds these islands can control the flow of trade, and in times of crisis, even strangle an enemy's economy. The Malacca Strait is not just another stretch of water, it is the world's busiest sea lane, carrying about 1/4 of all traded goods. Each year, almost 100,000 ships pass through. For China, this strait is a lifeline. Nearly 80% of its oil imports snake through here in long, vulnerable tankers. If the Malacca Strait were blocked, China would face a nightmare. Factories would slow down, gas stations would run dry, the country could lose access to vital raw materials and food supplies. This is why Chinese leaders often talk about the Malacca dilemma, their fear that someone, especially India, could cut off their supplies. India controls the islands right next to this choke point. Its navy can monitor every big ship heading to and from China. This power makes India a silent guardian, or a silent threat, over China's economic future. The Malacca Strait is, in many ways, the beating heart of Asia's trade, and India's islands are the key that could lock it. In March 2021, a giant container ship called the Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal. For 6 days, the world watched in disbelief. Hundreds of ships piled up, waiting for the way to clear. Products from electronics to coffee sat trapped on board, causing billions of dollars in losses. This incident was a wake-up call. It showed just how fragile global trade routes can be. One mistake, one accident, or one hostile act, and the entire flow of goods stops. Countries lost money, markets tumbled, and shelves went empty in faraway places. Now, imagine the same thing happening in the Malacca Strait. But this time, it's not an accident. It's a deliberate blockade. If India used its islands to stop ships, China's economy could be in deep trouble. Factories would halt, and prices would rise across Asia. The Suez Crisis taught the world a lesson. Control over narrow sea lanes means control over global trade. In the Indian Ocean, India has that power. A choke point is a narrow passage where ships must squeeze through. Whoever controls a choke point can control or even stop the flow of ships. The world has a few famous choke points: the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Malacca Strait. Choke points are the Achilles heel of global trade. They are easy to block but hard to bypass. Warships, mines, or even a single sunken ship can cut off supplies to whole countries. That's why nations guard these spots fiercely, and why rivals watch them just as closely. India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands watch over the Malacca Strait, perhaps the most important choke point for Asia. From air bases and listening posts, India can track every ship. In a crisis, the Navy can close the strait quickly, cutting China off from oil and goods. Control of choke points is invisible most days, but in a crisis, it becomes the most visible and dangerous power in the world. India is not alone in guarding the Indian Ocean. It has built strong partnerships with the United States, Japan, Australia, and France. Together, they form a powerful group called the Quad. These countries train together, share intelligence, and coordinate patrols. A new concept has emerged: the double fishhook strategy. So just imagine two hooks in the Indian Ocean, one in the east, one in the west. India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands form the eastern hook, while American and Allied bases form the western one. Together they can trap or monitor any ship moving in or out of Asia. Alliances give India more eyes and longer reach. French islands like Réunion, American bases in Diego Garcia, and Japanese surveillance all add to the net around China. Joint naval exercises send a loud message: no country can act alone. For China, this growing network is a nightmare. It means India's power is multiplied, making the Indian Ocean even harder for Chinese ships to cross unseen. China knows its trade is vulnerable. That's why it has poured money into new routes. Pipelines from Russia and Central Asia bring oil and gas over land. Railways run to Europe through Kazakhstan. Ports in Pakistan, Gwadar, and Myanmar, Kyaukphyu, offer possible shortcuts to the sea. But honestly, these routes are not enough. Pipelines carry only a small part of China's needs. Mountain passes freeze in winter or risk sabotage. Ports in Pakistan are hundreds of miles from China's factories. Every alternative is slower, more expensive, or more dangerous. The Malacca Strait remains the fastest, cheapest route for Chinese trade. No other path can handle the volume or speed. That's why China has not solved its Malacca dilemma. It must keep using this choke point and hope India never decides to close the door. Until new routes can match the Malacca Strait, China will always worry about India's island bases. China's navy is larger, it has more ships and submarines, its warships are new and well-equipped, but there is a catch. China's fleet is based far away, in the South and East China Seas. To reach the Indian Ocean, Chinese ships must pass through narrow straits, watched by Indian radars. India's navy is smaller, but it has home advantage. Indian ships are close to their bases. Aircraft can reach every corner of the Bay of Bengal quickly. Submarines can hide in the deep channels near the Andaman Islands. In a crisis, India can move first and faster. Allies add to India's strength. American, French, and Japanese ships often join Indian exercises. Together, they can outnumber and outsmart any outsider. India's geography, its unsinkable aircraft carrier, gives it the edge no matter how many ships China builds. This combination of geography, alliances, and fast response makes India's position in the Indian Ocean nearly unbeatable. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands are small on the map, but huge in importance. They are India's gatekeepers to the Indian Ocean. From these islands, India can watch, warn, or even shut down the trade lifeline that keeps China's economy running. China fears these islands for good reason. Its growth depends on open sea lanes. If India ever decided to blockade the Malacca Strait, it could bring China's factories to a standstill. No other route can replace this narrow passage. Future relations in Asia will be shaped by what happens around these islands. Will India and China compete, or find a way to cooperate? The world will watch closely, knowing that in the Indian Ocean, small islands can decide the fate of great nations. In the end, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are more than just land. They are the secret power in Asia's most important sea.